Welcome to Pop of Genius on Urban Politics. If you would like to join our community, please subscribe to the channel, like and share. If you want to support the channel or buy me a cup of coffee for my research time, Cash App $ Pop of Genius Films, and thank you for all of your support.
Much of my content will take you into a deep dive into historical context, which provides the viewer much of the full story, truth, and documentation. My opinions are my own, and I encourage my audience always to do their own independent research. Thank you for your support.
Damn. When
we have plenty of talented people
no,
here.
You don't. No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talent.
Hey, what affects one American affects the other. So, no, I'm not happy about what occurred, but I'm glad that we're finally getting to the truth behind everything, and we're finally seeing what his strategy was all along that we were trying to warn people about. And what sucks is the people that actually put him in office, because now they are suffering the most. They're suffering in regards to their party splitting in so many different directions, and then they're also suffering financially. They're getting a super wake-up call on their own identity within this country and on the international stage. So you know how we are, and the moment they realized it, and we had to be privy to watching that interview. No, I was like Phaedra back on the Real Housewives of Atlanta when she was listening to the argument between Sheree and Kenya Moore. She started acting like she wasn't there, but she was, while she was looking at her purse. That was hilarious. And that's exactly how I felt when I was looking at this conversation. And it's overdue for this group that has gotten their man back in office not once but twice by any means necessary. He was under how many assassination attempts on his life, and yet he's still here, and they call him God's choice for this country, even though he has not been faithful within his marriages. He didn't have a really good relationship with his kids in the beginning. People forget about that. See, they have selective memory. It was a while when he was not even talking with his son Donnie. There was a lot of contention between his kids and himself. It's just really within recent years that he's gotten to this point where they're all in one room. And he's been convicted. He has been sentenced to pay back taxes to the state of New York. He has committed voter fraud in the state of Georgia. He has been convicted of sexual crimes and so on and so forth. And you even heard him even say it over a mic years ago on how he feels about SA with women. Got this whole entire scandal that will not go away for him with Jeffrey Epstein. It just keeps living and living and living and gaining more momentum as the day goes by. So now Maga can no longer say that it's DEI. Once they heard President Trump tell Laura Ingram that no, they are not talented enough. Obviously, he's trying to say that they are not even smart enough to hold on to these critical thinking jobs that require higher skill set. But you know how they are. As soon as this interview went over, they started thinking and conversating and even saying, well, just give him a moment to iron it all out. Maybe he's not that best in communicating. Maybe he just needs to clarify some things with our party. So they said, no, it's not us. All this time, it's not us. It's DEI, right?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
It's not us, it's the illegals, right? That's why they can't get jobs. That's why their kids can't get jobs. That's why America's not great, right? No, it's Kamala Harris's laugh. That's what it is, right? That they blamed it on that. Then they said it's Obama and that Obamacare, right? And now we know that Obamacare, which is just a coin name for it, because it's really named the Affordable Care Act, where so many millions of Americans have actually, especially that are in a lower income set, have been able to pay for some type of medical health insurance.
I'm out.
Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
You have to bring in talent. When
Well, we
a
have
country
plenty of talented people
no, you
here.
don't. No, you don't.
H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration, because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent. When
Well, we have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have. You don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put
How did we ever do it before?
Realize you actually need workers from other countries. This country has not invested enough in its people to go to college. And if we did start here, Republicans will not approve of it. Republicans don't want people to be educated.
My question is this. He didn't say that there were no jobs available for American workers. There's plenty of jobs available for American workers, and especially in a particular industry that these type of people that support Trump and within the Maga sphere, they are big proponents of.
Jerry Spencer turned to unemployed Americans, but says after 2 weeks, most couldn't cope.
The farmer says, start over here and end over here. And that was the extent of their instructions. With the American workers, they all had to be taught all this and separate. And in addition to the fact that their bodies just were not
Sure. Never
built
said
for
about
it.
China, but we do have a lot of people coming in from China. We always have, China and other countries. We also have a massive system of colleges and universities. And if we were to cut that in half, which perhaps makes some people happy, you would have half the colleges in the United States go out of business.
So what?
Well, I think that's a big deal.
Are they fans
You
of,
would have the
fans of the United States?
Yeah, but you would have, as you know, historically, black colleges and universities would all be out of business. You would have a system of colleges and universities.
So we're dependent on China to keep our university system going?
But I think it's good to have. I actually think it's good to have outside countries. Look, I want to be able to get along with the world.
They're not the French. They're the Chinese.
Now
They spy on us. They
you're
steal
starting to
intellectual
see
property.
a reversal of this group of people, this MAGA group, MAGA nuts, these groypers, these nationalists. You're starting to see the decline and a reversal of something that they tried to hold on to for so long, and it was all rooted in division, racism, privilege, classism, and now you're starting to see them pulling for straws now.
Thing. Yeah, I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up, but the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities.
Damn, that right there is just, wow, bon appetit.
Time for MAGA to look in the mirror. Because according to their zaddy, Trump, he said that it's not China, it's not India. It's not the H1B1 visa. It's not DEI. It's not this. It's not that. Hey, we can keep Obamacare. Just rename it to Trump Care. That's even working really good. So who else could they blame? When you look at it, then who President Trump didn't say that there's no jobs in America, right? He didn't say that the Americans here are not qualified for every job. He just said that there's particular critical skills that are needed to work in tech, to work in manufacturing, when it comes to new age manufacturing, creating batteries, boards, things like that work in electronics, in cars, and that's also in conjunction with AI. Okay, computer engineering, and not just basic computer engineering. Okay, unlike a lot of the other countries where we are able to provide on B1 visas to foreign international students and workers, is because while America invests in guns, they're investing in their schools. And they're highly competitive. Stop lying.
Why, sir, is that a pro-MAGA position when so many American kids want to go to school?
Just shh. You know why I say that? Because that's a bunch of bull. That's a bunch of bull. Why? Because their group, right, their base, and the people that influence their voters the most are the least college educated. In fact, they take pride on not finishing college and being so smart and witty that they can out-talk you into any political conversation, right? They think that they know the law so well. And yet none of them, hardly any of them, have really finished college. Steven Crowder, he's an anchor baby. His parents are really from Canada. Once he was born over here, they ended up moving back later on to Canada. Then he came back here later on to the United States. He is a college dropout. Nick Fuentes, who is a Latin white passing American who split off from Maga and has created his own group, and he's the king of the groypers. His campaign is America First, and yet he dropped out of college freshman year when he was in Boston. He's originally from Chicago, but he went to school, Boston University. He dropped out that first year when he became a political figure during campaign. College dropout. And last but not least is Charlie Kirk. He is there, or he was there as Daddy Jr., right? He's a college dropout. Heck, he made millions of dollars on writing a book titled The College Scam. So I don't think it's all about education. And a lot of young white men, now white women will go to college, but white men, especially a particular age range, they are part of the L generation, the loser and the lazy generation. Everything has been handed to them, plus the backpack of privilege and lies and twisted history and guns, definitely that. And these young men are so enraged that the same formula that worked for their father or their grandfather, their great-great-grandfather, and so on, and going back, when white privilege and violence against black and brown people were deemed illegal, yeah, America worked for you. You know why? Because there were no other outside superpowers that were challenging you at the time. America had been the superpower for a very long time. And so now America is no longer the superpower. It is now second to China. And that is the reason why Trump was trying to tell Laura Ingram he was trying to be very non-confrontational, but he was being very stern to get this message across that we need China. In fact, we're going to bring in 600,000 students from that country. Why would you need to bring in 600,000 students from a country that is considered not your ally? You know why? It's because they own you now. He knows this. He knows this. There are times where I've had conversations with white Americans, not all, some white Americans that have made me cringe when I hear the things that they have said towards the Chinese American, Asian Americans. And they think that, oh, because I'm a Black American and we have some type of camaraderie as far as being American, even though they're racist towards us the most. But you have some that actually think that, well, I can talk to you as a Black person. I don't want to buy anything. They feel like we have a longer history together. I don't want to buy anything from China, or they'll say all kinds of disrespectful things. Not only during COVID, even today in 2025, here in November 2025, I will hear this all the time. Okay, and this is not a lie. This is for real. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people can substantiate my saying of what I'm trying to explain to you, that is really really embarrassing. I really don't have the words to describe it, and I have to correct them, or I have to change the subject in correction, because a diss to someone else that's has an ethnic background is a diss to me as a Black person. So their backpack of privilege and firearms and laws that help to support these young white men, and this inheritance of privilege, it started when they fled Europe. They did anything and everything to get out of the bondage of the European feudalism. They no longer wanted to be under the king. And when America went into Revolutionary War, they warred against King George, who was in power at that time. Being in a feudal system as a white person back in where they are from, before they came here, first they came through the Dutch. Then they were able to come through some of the wealthy British, but at first it was through the Dutch. They did everything and anything to get out of Europe. They always say it was religious persecution. No, it wasn't. It wasn't religious persecution, because you know why? When you came over here to the United States, y'all still were persecuting each other. The Puritans were against another group. Now it's the Presbyterian, the Puritans. Then you had the Quakers and the Baptists and the Catholics. So if you are so steady on religion being your main focus, why is there such division in religion here in the United States, and especially in the early parts of the United States, right? Okay, so they will do anything not to be back down on that peasants, because that's where they came from. If you look at some of the pictures and you go to the site where they have reenactments of the Mayflower, the same way they built their little straw roof bungalow houses in the Mayflower matches the poor villages and the homes they left from in Britain, in Ireland, okay? And a lot of these countries that they left from, but especially the first ones that came over here, If you do a comparison, a side by side, the same homes they had over there in Europe with the straw roofs and the little bungalow style, look like clay almost, the same ones that they built when they first came here to the United States. Many of them died off. Many of them actually had cannibalism. They turned to cannibalism, and they are now just unearthing evidence of that. There's a young girl that they found in that Jamestown group where her skull, it shows the gnawing of human teeth. So yeah, they actually resorted to eating each other because they fled here to leave. They didn't have the money. They were slaves. Again, even when they went to the Revolutionary War, if you put a British soldier side by side with an American militiaman and their soldiers, that was their soldiers. They were militia from different counties that came together. They had some of the same similar raggedy garments that they reproduced from when they first left Europe. They still kept that same style. Many of these people lived off the grid. That's why when you look at some of in the South, if you look at the plantations, once they got from underneath the subjugation and slavery of Britain, when they came over here to the United States, they got the money from the tobacco and the cotton to buy their freedom, enough ammunition and guns to be able to buy their freedom from Britain. And you see the homes that they built down in the South on the plantations. If you look at the homes there and the way that the landscape is manicured and the neat rows, it looks very similar to the British castles and that same type of aesthetics. They tried to replicate that. If you look at cotton when it's first blooming in its green state, in the neat rows, see, they even though Black Americans, Africans that were brought over here to the United States, Black Americans cultivated that land and were the keepers of both the tobacco and the cotton crops and other crops as well, and labor responsibilities. It looks very similar to the things that they do in Europe. America has always had something called manifest destiny. It is a term that was used to describe the spirit of the people that expanded across the new country that they named America, that became named America, that was stolen from the indigenous people here. They felt as if this renewed spirit was somehow uniting all of white America to come together and to push as far as they can into the westward expansion, clearing out indigenous people, their tribes, their culture, their language that had been here for hundreds and hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. Pushing these people by any means necessary. There's so much death. The indigenous populations and tribes went from millions of people to now you only have a few reservations left here in the United States. And many of them still are suffering from those atrocities that occurred back before America had been colonized by the British and the Spanish, but mainly the British. And in my opinion, I feel like manifest destiny might not really know it, but there's also a lot of spiritual connotation to the things that are happening to us in the realistic realm, like in our realm, the realm that we're in. But there is another realm that's going on outside of us. And if you are an American and you do believe in the Holy Bible and you study the Holy Bible and its word, you should have no problem with what I'm saying. If you're not a Christian, please do look more into what I'm saying as far as the historical parts of it. I'm not saying for you to change your religion or anything like that. I'm just telling you the more historical side of what's going on, and how so much of what's happening now is very reflective of prophetic scriptures that are found in the Holy Bible. And also too, there is a spirit of division that eventually divided this country between the North and the South. So there's like two demonic princes or princess and princess over these domains within the United States. If you look at Daniel 10 and 13, I'm not going to go too far out with you, but if you look at 10 and 13 of the book of Daniel in the Holy Bible, it says that, but the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 1 and 20 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. See, in that story, it's describing prophet at the time. His name was Daniel, who was a part of the Jewish people, the Jewish nations that had been overtaken by the Babylonians. The Babylonians forced him to come back to Persia, and they were slaves for hundreds of years in bondage. And with many of those Israelites that were taken in after and being taken in as prisoners of war, some of them were actually very elite men and women of God. And this prophet named Daniel happens to be one of them. And because he was under duress, he prayed to God, who we believe is God and also Jesus Christ. But during that time, he prayed to God that God send him help within this nation, because they were definitely outnumbered. And so God did send help, and he was able to see within the spiritual realm that there was actually demonic presence that can withhold messages between people who live in our realm. And so bringing that back to America today and historically, there is this spirit called manifest destiny, and there's also another spirit called division. And the Bible says that if a nation is divided, if people are divided, right, God is not in the middle of that. And if there is an absence of God, who else fills that space? It's so demonic to where it caused this nation to kill each other. And both manifest destiny and the God, father of satanic division, it is the thing that helps to drive this push to hold on to white privilege. It is the thing that motivates people today to hold on to white privilege. You do not see this type of white privilege in other European nations like America. It's something that's just uniquely strange, okay? And it caused this nation to murder each other in the hundreds of thousands upon thousands upon thousands. And it even took out the life of the president of the nation, Abraham Lincoln, after he put into act Emancipation Proclamation, the ending of American slavery, transatlantic slavery that came into America. And America was willing to take as much blood as it possibly could, so that both sides, North and South was willing to take the blood from the Black Americans that slaved for the land for free. The Northerns were willing to take the blood of the Southern whites that did not want to pay the amount of tax money they should have been paying towards the nation after they divided themselves from the money that they were gaining from the free labor of the slaves, and the money that they were getting from selling the textile of cotton throughout the entire world, and also sugar, and also rice, and also tobacco is another one. And after the Civil War, there was something that united them together within this division and manifest destiny. And that was, we will make a deal. We will stop killing each other. They even made a deal with '83 with the signing of the Treaty of Paris. And once the Revolutionary War ended, Civil War had ended. Outsiders. They had not had any of the discord between England, Britain. That was something that was to enforce and enhance the slaveholders, so that they would have dominion and power over the people that they kept enslaved. There was a new pact that happened between the North and the South. After slavery ended, Reconstruction period, and that is the creation of hate groups. Their doctrine within these hate groups, they all united, creating the Ku Klux American South, and other was able to create groups, and even the Daughters of the Confederacy is another one that limited the power of newly freed Black Americans. The North really didn't say anything about it or took any type of military challenge to the South, even when voting rights were being broken, and that's a federal crime. They never said anything. It went on for decades, from 1865 until 1864 to when slavery was emancipated, to 1964 was the first time that Black Americans were able to receive basic human civil rights. Been lynchings, killings, burning down of towns, flooding of towns. Never gave Black people any type of compensation for their descendants of the people that they had enslaved for 400 plus years, getting free labor. No compensation was given. And even though no compensation was given to their descendants, and I'm a descendant of that as well, we were still able to establish ourselves within this country. The expansion of the Black American after slavery had progressed so fastly to where they had to create new policies and laws to slow that progression down. There were so many inventors, there were so many new forms of art and culture that started to dominate how the rest of the world viewed America. Without the Black Americans, their culture became enriched right now with the Black Americans. Hardly no culture. But what they did in that time was they wanted our bodies. They were angry that we could no longer work free for them anymore. And because of that, they killed us. There were so many lynchings that there is a national lynching monument in Alabama that has hanging separate installations that represents each of those hanging metal installations, and there's hundreds of them, okay? Each of those individually hung installations and some of the writings installing their names on that monument are of the lynchings that occurred due to racial injustice, mainly for Black people. And there was a scripture that I read in the beginning in regards to there being a stronghold in a realm that we cannot see here in the United States that has caused division, and it has superseded the white American that follows individuals like Trump. They're in KKK, they're in hate groups, Daughters of the Confederacy, white privilege, nationalism, all of these things that are connected to eugenics, They are connected to wanting to exert power with violence and, again, privilege. And remember that scripture I read in the beginning in the book of Daniel 10 and 13 with the prophet Daniel. Now, because the United States turned a blind eye in the North and allowed the South to wreak havoc on the Black American, they did it in the crimes of lynchings. They lynched so many Black Americans. There were other people that were lynched too, like Italians in the beginning, but not for a long period of time. There was crimes against Jewish people, but not, it was bombings of synagogues and things like that. That still happens today, but not on the capacity of Black Americans. There was so many lynchings of Black Americans that it started to become an American pastime in the South. There are postcards that they would send friends and family with the lynching picture happening, with hundreds of people standing out there in front posing with the lynched human being, the carcass of the Black American that was lynched. They lynched men, they lynched women, they lynched children, they lynched women who were pregnant, and also they would cut the baby out of the stomach. They would decapitate you, they would cut off men's private parts. They would do anything and everything they could within their power to completely terrorize Black Americans for over 100 years. Okay, and America, because of that, is cursed. Why are they cursed? Because it says it in Deuteronomy. If, again, I'm not trying to get religious on you, but this just substantiates what I'm saying, because America is supposed to be a nation under God, indivisible, right? We're supposed to be, quote unquote, indivisible, but yet they carry a divisive spirit over this nation. And we're supposed to be under one God, correct? So it says, Deuteronomy 21:22 through 23. It says, his body shall not remain hanging overnight, because the land will be cursed by God. Now, if you calculate all of the lynchings that occurred during the period of Jim Crow, even up until this day, where there was just recently a young man by the name of Trey Trevion at Delta State University, an HBCU college in Mississippi. He was found hanging from a lynching. Why was it a lynching? Because the belt that was used to hang his body, it would be too big to be around his waist. He was a small guy. So if you calculate all of these bodies that are being lynched, that are being left overnight, that were not taken down, that were used as picture props, do you know how cursed this nation is? I mean, if you just want to look at it in that perspective. Why America has invested so much of its time and money the Second Amendment. While other countries like China, like India, like South Korea, education is something that is priority for them. It is priority. Here in the United States, privilege is priority, and then second, firearms. And the reason why I say that is because, do you know when the Second Amendment was originally signed into law? It was later ratified, but when it was signed into law, remember I said that the Paris Treaty, which ended the Revolutionary War here in America, that was signed in 1783. Right? That means war is over. Then why was the Second Amendment created in 6 years later, in the year of 1789? It was because the expansion of slavery in America. That's how powerful slavery was. It was to protect the owner's rights. That's what it was for. It was later ratified and strengthened a few years later, but that was the original year. So if you have no outside enemies, right, as on a capacity of the Revolutionary War, then why would you expand gun rights? So that's why I said the Second Amendment is something that's also an instrument of violence. It is there to protect doctrine, the father of division and manifest destiny have now. I call them the L generation, both losers and they are lazy. Everything has been handed to them. There have been wars on top of wars, upon wars that have been fought here and abroad, and these young men now that are so angry that will pick up a gun. They've never enlisted. They've never been across seas. They've never picked up a weapon against an enemy country. But they are quick to pick up an AR-15 and show up at a school full of innocent children because they feel like they're not being taken seriously as a white man. They will come out onto public streets at night with tiki torches. They will come out there yelling that they need to take their country back when they are the majority. They are the ones that make the rules. They are the ones that control the money, and they are still incompetent enough to where they are now being forced to be on their knees for other countries to help save them. Why is Governor Brian Kemp running back and forth to Korea after that congressional candidate lied, Tory Branham in Georgia, and said that there needed to be an ICE raid when over 300 South Korean workers were there that were highly skilled, that were there for the benefit of Americans to bring in a multi-billion-dollar automobile plant by the name of Hyundai that would employ so many Americans here in the state of Georgia. He is now running like a chicken with his head cut off. Both him and Trump they're on their knees begging South Korea to come back. Because of the humiliation ritual that they put the people of South Korea through and the ordeal they had to suffer over here in the ICE detention center that had deplorable experience. It was deplorable conditions. They said that they will never come back. Hey, they may change their mind, but if I went through that, I don't think I would trust your word anymore. And the sad part about it is this: they love it. They don't want to be educated. They say on one hand that they're being ousted because they're white and everyone else is being picked over them. Black people have all of these crutches, right? They claim that black people have crutches. Black people who at one time would be killed if they learned how to read. They created literacy laws that would challenge any American in the South. If you were caught even teaching a slave how to read, it could cost you your life, definitely the slave's life. And so this current group of black Americans and the black Americans descendants that derive from uneducated slaves are, I think, doing pretty well. We don't have any type of leg up. And policies were only created because privilege did not allow for black Americans to be hired on to jobs that could support themselves. So they had to have guardrails placed on these people, voting guardrails to be placed on to many of these Americans that are in that Maga base. And it's just an inheritance of miseducation, no education. And that is the reason why when you're not given the right information, when you're rejecting what really happened historically, if you don't want to know what happened in your past, the full truth, you don't want to teach your children that, you're setting them up for failure. And it's sad because American white men for so many decades, centuries, have been told that they have the privilege, they have the guns, and they have the law on their side. And when they feel challenged by that in any notion, then they become extremely violent. Extremely violent. Instead of taking accountability, looking in the mirror, taking accountability of who the real problem is, because you can't say it's DEI anymore. You can't say it's affirmative action. You can't say that, oh, black people are lazy and on food stamps and Section 8 and all that. Now he's gotten rid of all that stuff, right? Now he's done. Your guy has came in there and he has, what did you say? Drain the swamp, right? You claim he got the quote unquote illegals out there, right? Even though they were helping to feed our nation, they were doing the jobs that no one else was taking. You didn't want CRT, so you had the Department of Education dismantled, right? You wanted to limit the rights of people that didn't look like you. So he went in there and he did that. And the thing about this is, it's because these folks, they have to come to terms with where they are at in on this global in this global community now. They are back at the peasant level, and they don't like it. They've fought, they've lied, they've pillaged to never return to the peasant level. But that's where they're at. That is where they're at, and they're pulling straws. James Baldwin, the late James Baldwin, a great writer and advocate and social activist and a philosopher. He said that it is certain in any case that ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. And that's exactly what this is. This rage, they even call it rage baiting, right? They're so enthralled with the rage that they can't no longer take the guns and the law and the privilege and it just create opportunities anymore. Now you have to actually compete, not only against the people that you had enslaved here or the indigenous that you pillaged and wiped out. Now you have to compete with people outside of your country, and you have no control over that. You can't bomb another country because they're smarter than you. You can't go in and colonize a nation and they now know who they are. You can't do that anymore, and neither can the British. And now it's just ignorance, and is allied with this false sense of power and a loss of power. Rome is burning and it's falling, and they are back at the peasant level. That's why they're willing to drink the Kool-Aid that President Trump poured into their cups during the first campaign and this campaign. Biggest con game of the 21st century. Because when Lori and him were discussing in that interview, I just saw the unraveling of everything that was really going on behind the scenes for Trump. Trump is a New Yorker. He put on a great performance. He wrote his own play. He's like a Shakespeare. He wrote his own play, and he played it so well, and they believed him. He doesn't care anything about you. He cares about his lifestyle, both at Mar-a-Lago in New York. Okay? He can care less about your farms. He can import food from anywhere. He can care less about your schools, about your churches. And in fact, if you listen to the interview again, when Laura Ingram started mentioning things that were upon Jesus and Christianity, did you recognize his body language? He goes, yeah, I don't even know if I'll make it in. You know why? It's because he is now taking on the Jewish faith. See, because America is in its last stage and is grasping for straws, they are now leaguing, and they're sorely afraid of Putin. They know what he can do. But this is all, again, very prophetic, very much in conjunction with what's going on in the Holy Bible. Because Gog and Magog are the descriptions of China and Russia. In the last days of that's written in the Bible, in Revelation, Gog and Magog, they're going to be the superpowers over the world. Did you see what happened when President Putin came on U.S. soil a few months ago? Let him tell you about it.
Donald Trump's meeting with Putin in Alaska is a complete and utter disgrace, and this photo really shows you how. This is a picture of American soldiers laying down the red carpet for Putin, a murderous dictator who hates this country, and
you're back down at that peasant class,
would take all
and
of
it's
their
time
lives
for you
like
now
that.
to take out some trash. It's time for you to box up this privilege and get on with your lives. Y'all are always telling Black Americans to go back to Africa. And you know what happened after a while? They actually started to look into it, and now they're actually doing that. Black Americans and Africans may have cultural differences, but there is a connection there, and that is the land. We are self-sufficient people. And so even ourselves, there are many African Americans that are now going back over there. You have a lot of celebrities that are making an example there. They have dual citizenships. Black people are getting businesses over there. They're creating new lives. I'm not saying all of us, but at least we have an option. They always say, oh, well, you don't have nowhere to go. No, Black people, even though we have differences between our communities, but we know where to go to. And Africans know that as well. Y'all are always telling us to go back to Africa. What it looks like, according to what Ben Shapiro said, it looked like y'all need to relocate back to Europe. Because you can't do the work here. You can't farm here. You can't take those jobs that the migrants that you deported from this country in such a vicious way through your ICE. Those jobs that are left behind, you're too good for that. But that's what you're qualified for. And you're back down to the peasants. I'm not saying that the migrant were peasants. They were here as an economic opportunity. But see, this is your land, right? And so what you escaped from in Britain is what you're returning back to here in America. So take those jobs. Take those jobs. Because Black American women, we're the rising group of people, of educated folks. And all of these 300,000 Black women that are experiencing job loss, that was just a foretelling of everything else that was getting ready to come that was going to affect your bottom line. So you better start getting these Black women back into office. You better stop dropping this H-1B1 visa situation with the $100,000. That's stupid. That's stupid. And you better start finding out ways to be more self-sufficient. Rural Europe is doing it. And that's where you probably need to go back to and tap into. Besides hate groups. Tap into it. They're doing their own farming over there. They don't have migrants. They don't have slaves over there anymore. They have discovered a way to do it in Europe now. And they're white people with no melanin, and they're able to farm and feed themselves. Please let me know what you think. Share, like, and subscribe. And I hope to see you on the next one.
Welcome to Pop of Genius on Urban Politics. If you would like to join our community, please subscribe to the channel, like and share. If you want to support the channel or buy me a cup of coffee for my research